The shuttle descended onto the red sand, and Commissioner Susan Havran stepped out to find not a single wall in sight, only an open archway and endless desert. In that archway stood a human warden with a chipped coffee mug, skull paint on his jaw, watching them like they were the ones out of place.
Where are the fences? The guard towers? I see nothing.
That's because there is nothing.
Then what kind of penal colony is this?
Come inside. I'll pour you some coffee.
He led them into a sparse concrete room, the only structure for miles, and filled a battered metal pot with water.
I didn't come here for coffee. I came to inspect a prison that apparently has no security.
If you really want to know how we prevent escapes, walk 5 minutes that way.
The silence in the room stretched tighter than any perimeter fence, as the weight of those words settled over the delegation.
You still haven't answered. How do you keep prisoners inside with no walls, no sensors, no locked doors?
We don't keep them inside. That's the point.
Susan's aides exchanged uneasy glances as she pushed back her chair and strode out through the open archway.
Commissioner, I am scanning for buried perimeter fields. There's nothing. It's just dirt.
The red dust stretched in every direction, unbroken, untamed, and utterly indifferent to the word prison.
Then you are either negligent beyond belief, or this is a cruel joke.
Maybe? Or maybe you haven't asked the right question yet.
And what question would that be?
You'll know when you stop looking for walls and start looking at the horizon.
And for the first time, Susan felt a cold thread of doubt weave through her certainty, because the warden wasn't defensive. He was expectant. The tension at the gate hadn't yet broken, when a figure in faded gray prison clothes stepped out of the building and walked past them, as if the delegation didn't exist.
You. Stop right there.
The man turned, and Susan saw the hollow, unafraid eyes of someone who had already been somewhere far worse than a cell. He raised a hand in a casual wave, then turned back to the desert and kept walking.
Why isn't anyone stopping him? That's a prisoner.
He knows the way. He'll be back.
Back? From what? There's nothing out there.
Exactly, and that nothing is the only guard we need.
Susan's hand twitched toward her sidearm, but Patrick's quiet words stopped her colder than any command.
I wouldn't. The desert doesn't care about rank.
2 days later, at first light, a shape emerged from the horizon. A man stumbling, skin blistered red, lips cracked open, but still walking. Susan spotted him through a window and rushed to the gate, but Thomas moved past her as if she were a ghost.
Thomas, look at me. You've been gone 2 days. What did you find?
He kept walking, one raw foot after another, until he disappeared into the concrete block, leaving Susan standing alone at the pillars. Patrick stepped up beside her, coffee still in hand, and repeated the question he'd asked 2 days earlier.
Do you understand yet, Commissioner?
I understand that you've built a system that breaks people without a single locked door, but I don't understand how it works.
Earth itself is the wall. Sigma isn't a prison, Commissioner. It's just a piece of Earth without fences or guards. The gate stays open because prisoners can walk out any time. They never do, not for long.
That makes no sense. If they can leave, why don't they keep going?
Patrick just looked at the desert, and in that silence, Susan understood that the answer was already walking toward her, with cracked lips and hollow eyes.
What exactly is out there that turns men like Thomas into silent shadows? I want specifics.
Night cold drops 40 degrees. Heat stroke kills in 3 hours. Creatures you can't see will sting you dead. And there's no water for 100 miles.
All manageable. A cooling suit, a water recycler, programmed nav. Your primitive environment isn't as lethal as you think.
Except Earth doesn't care about your tech. Storms rise without warning. Predators don't stop. Sand clogs everything, and the isolation breaks minds before bodies.
Then upgrade the gear. I refuse to accept that a planet is more powerful than centuries of engineering.
Tell me, Commissioner, if it's so simple, why hasn't anyone made it? In 100 years, None has walked past the second dune and come back intact.
Perhaps none of them had the right resources. I am not a prisoner.
Prove it. Take a beacon. Walk 5 minutes out at dusk. You'll see.
Fine. I'll walk your 5 minutes. But don't expect me to come crawling back like him.
Susan strapped the locator to her belt, and as the first evening shadow crossed the sand, she stepped past the pillars into a silence that already felt hungry. At first, the desert was only sand and silence, the beacon's glow steady in her palm, the gate shrinking behind her step by step.
This is nothing. Wind and dirt. My suit handles worse.
Then the sun vanished, and the temperature crashed like a slammed door. Her suit's regulator whined, struggling. A skittering sound rose to her left. Claws on rock, then nothing. The darkness pressed closer than any cell wall.
There's nothing there. Only wind. Only my own footsteps.
The beacon flickered once, twice. A cold that wasn't weather slipped under her collar.
5 minutes, he said. 5 minutes. I've been out here too long.
Reason abandoned her. She turned and ran, boots slipping on loosed stone. The beacon's dying light carving a frantic arc through the black. She burst through the pillars. 22 minutes later, chest heaving, the beacon dead in her fist. Patrick hadn't moved.
How? How many have never come back?
Does the number matter, Commissioner? You already know what's out there.
I need to see it. Show me.
He led her inside to a cramped room that smelled of old paper and iron, where a single bulb buzzed over filing cabinets. On the wall hung a map so dense with colored pins it looked like a rash spreading from the gate outward.
Every pin is someone who chose to leave. Red pins, no trace. Green pins, we found remains.
Susan's eyes tracked the pins stretching into blank desert, each one a person who had walked out and simply stopped existing.
The only statistic we have is the number of people who never came back, and that number is 0. Found.
0. Found.
The room felt colder than the desert night, the weight of all those vanished lives pressing down on her understanding of what a prison really was.
Is this official policy? Your government sanctions this?
Policy is just a word. We don't build walls. The desert is the only guard.
He set the coffee mug down with a thud that sounded like a period.
You are letting them walk into a death trap. That's not corrections. It's butchery.
I never laid a hand on anyone. I offer water, a bed, and the truth. The rest is their freedom. On your home world, prisons have walls and towers. Guards shoot escapers. Yet prisoners still try. Here, the gate stays open, and no one succeeds. Which way has fewer corpses?
That's not the same. You can't compare.
But the words wouldn't come. She'd seen the map, and the comparison was already a verdict.
I need to speak with someone who tried, who saw the desert and came back. Give me that.
He studied her for a long moment, then reached for a key on his belt.
I'll bring Thomas. He's the only one who'll still talk about it. Patrick returned with Thomas, who sat down heavily, his hands resting limp on the metal table as if they'd forgotten how to fight.
6 times. I walked out 6 times. First time, I thought I'd make the hills. Second time, I brought water. Third time, I ran. None of it mattered.
He described the thirst that turned his tongue to leather, the hallucinations that whispered in his mother's voice. The moment he knew he'd die and kept walking.
Then why do you keep trying, if you know it's pointless?
Because at first you think there's got to be an end. That if you are tough enough, smart enough, you'll find the edge. But it's just more desert. Now I know. Earth doesn't need walls. The open gate is the most honest thing here.
Susan saw it then, not a broken man, but a man who had made peace with a world that could kill him without lifting a finger.
I need to think.
She walked out into the cooling night air, and Patrick said nothing, only refilled his mug and watched the stars appear above the silent gate. An hour before the moon's rose, Susan stood at her window, staring at the empty gate, unable to let the day go. Then she saw them, 6 figures in gray, gathering near the pillars, their movements quick and practiced.
Commissioner, I've been listening. They're planning to run. All 6 at once.
They know what the desert does.
They've stockpiled water. One of them has a blade. They think together they can make it, together they can make it.
I could stop them. Shout. Wake the warden. But then what? This system proves itself by letting them fail. Don't sound an alarm.
But they'll die out there.
Then they'll die, and we'll have another red pin on the map. I didn't build this system, Aldec. I am just here to understand it.
And so the 6 stepped past the pillars into the black, carrying nothing but water and a blade, while Susan watched them become shadows. A floorboard creaked behind her. Susan didn't turn. She already knew Patrick had come to watch with her.
Group runs happen. Every few months, someone thinks numbers will beat the desert. They won't.
Then, why let them go? Why not just refuse them water?
Because that would be a prison, and Sigma was never built to be a prison.
Then what is it?
A piece of earth without fences. The gate isn't there to keep them in. It's there to remind them they can leave. The planet does the rest.
Susan understood then. This wasn't negligence. It was a philosophy so cold it didn't need walls.
Everyone who stays is already serving their sentence. Everyone who leaves, well, the desert renders them harmless.
In the starlight, the empty gate stood like the mouth of a truth she could no longer unsee.
Do you ever feel guilt, letting them walk into that?
Used to. Then, I saw what happens on worlds that build walls. Let me show you.
He led her to his office, where the only light came from a data tablet flickering to life. On the screen, an image appeared. A high-security prison on her own homeworld. Inmates rioting, guards with weapons raised.
They killed 4 prisoners that week. Here, no guard has ever fired a shot.
But we don't let them walk into the desert to die. That's different.
Different how you count the bodies in your prisons. We count the ones the desert keeps.
The tablet's logs scrolled. 211 inmate deaths on her homeworld the previous year. Sigma. 0 by guard, and those who vanished were just gone.
So tell me, Commissioner, which warden has more blood on his hands?
No answer came. Just the wind pushing sand across footprints that were already gone. Dawn broke cold. By the time the sun was full, the 6 had not returned. Susan stood at the gate, a mug of coffee Patrick had pressed into her hands.
Do you keep exact count? Not just the pins, the number.
347 since I took this post. Not one found.
347.
The number settled into the silence like a stone in deep water, rippling through everything she thought she knew about justice.
We measured our prison success by how tall the walls were, how many guards we posted. You measure it by how few people even try to leave. We built cages. You built acceptance.
Patrick said nothing. For the first time, there was no challenge in his eyes, only a tired understanding that she had finally crossed into his unlensed territory. The midpoint sank in not as a revelation, but as a quiet, irrevocable shift in the ground beneath her feet. She knew then she would write her report. She just didn't yet know what she would say. In the cramped cockpit of her shuttle, Susan sat before a blank holographic interface, the cursor pulsing like a heartbeat.
Every sentence I write either excuses murder or condemns an entire species. There's no clean line.
She typed a word, then deleted it, typed another. The screen remained a graveyard of half-formed arguments.
Commissioner, you are on your 4th hour. Perhaps a break?
Tell me honestly, Aldec. If you were writing this report, what would you recommend?
I cannot. It works, but the cost. I can't weigh lives like that.
Neither could she. The report was expanding beyond words, into a decision that would define not just her career, but the souls of entire civilizations.
I need to ask him one more thing.
She sealed the cockpit and walked across the cold sand toward the only light for miles, the flickering bulb in Patrick's window. Behind her, the blank report waited. Ahead, the warden who had never once pulled a trigger, She found him at the metal table, coffee mug half empty, the overhead bulb buzzing its tired hymn.
It's still murder by any reasonable measure. You let the desert kill them.
Murder implies a choice I didn't make. No one is forced through that gate. They walk because they want to.
You are still complicit. You let them walk, knowing they won't survive.
I had a prisoner once, walked out for 3 days, came back, never tried again, became a model inmate. The desert taught him what bars couldn't.
That doesn't justify the others who died out there.
On your homeworld, 40% of released inmates commit new crimes within a year. Here, recidivism is nearly zero. Which system do you think causes less harm?
That's not the same. You can't compare. I can't argue anymore. Not against numbers. Not against this place.
She walked out into the night, the cold sand crunching under her boots, and the first honest line of her report wrote itself in the dark. She sat back in the cockpit and watched the words form, not as argument, but as quiet truth.
I recommend adoption of the Sigma model as a voluntary containment alternative. Zero guard on inmate violence. Recidivism near zero.
She read it aloud later, in the admin building, Patrick listening with his coffee still warm.
That's honest enough.
He gave a slow nod, the skull paint shifting with his jaw, and refilled her mug in answer.
I am sending it, then.
She pressed transmit, and the message vanished into the night sky toward the council. Irreversible. After, they sat in silence, as the generator hummed, the weight of what she'd done settling like dust.
More coffee.
She held out her chipped mug, and for the first time since landing, the silence felt like a verdict she could live with. Morning came, and the delegation shuttles sat waiting. Susan paused at the gate, Patrick beside her, the desert breathing silence around them.
What happens to the ones who never come back?
Nothing. They become part of the desert. No memorial, no record, just another pin on the map.
The answer settled like a stone in dry sand. Susan stared out at the red emptiness. Aldeck called that the shuttle was ready. Susan lingered, held Patrick's gaze for another heartbeat, then turned away. The shuttle lifted off, engines churning red dust into the wind, and Susan watched the gate shrink below. From altitude, the desert was an unbroken wound of rust and silence, dotted with invisible graves that no monument would mark. She understood then that Earth's real prison was not the desert, but the silence that followed an unsuccessful escape. The tower prisons of her homeworld seemed loud and clumsy, their walls screaming where Sigma only waited. As the blue of the upper atmosphere faded to black, she kept her eyes on the world below, her face unreadable. 3 weeks later, the council voted without a word. The report was sealed, the decision unanimous. But within a month, the prison walls of 3 empires began to fall. Construction drones sliced through energy fences and concrete, silencing alarms that had rung for centuries. Workers in exosuits coordinated the unbuilding, melting down blast doors into raw alloy. News feeds speculated about a new penal philosophy, but no one named the architect. Spokespeople refused to comment. The silence itself was the first official statement. The galaxy watched the footage of walls falling, but understood nothing of the philosophy behind them. They saw walls come down. They did not see the report that made it inevitable, nor the warden in a faded uniform who had poured coffee and trusted the desert, nor the commissioner who had walked into the dark and returned with a truth no one could unknow. 6 months after the walls fell, the Galactic Safety Bureau published its annual crime report. Recidivism across the 3 empires dropped 28%. Violent crime fell 32%. Independent analysts scrambled for causes, but their models included nothing like an open gate and a red desert. Officials declined to comment, and the newsfeed chart spoke in a vacuum of silence. The bars on the hologram fell like toppled walls, their downward slide more damning than any confession. No one could explain why crime had dropped, because no one was willing to name the real reason. The truth was too unsettling. A death world had become the galaxy's most effective prison, and so the statistics sat without context, a number that worked backward from consequence to silent cause. Only a handful knew that the silence was not an accident, but the inevitable result of Earth's quiet logic. The galaxy moved on, never asking why, because the answer was already buried in the red sand. In a sparse office on her homeworld, Susan sat beneath a hologram of the old prison walls. Now decommissioned, their image kept for archive. An official leaned forward, voice low, Sigma protocol. Was it worth it?
We stopped measuring prison success by how tall the walls were. We started measuring it by how few people wanted to leave.
She paused, the weight of the desert still in her voice.
The desert doesn't execute anyone. It just waits.
The official said nothing. The hologram of the wall flickered once. In that quiet, Susan understood the conversation was over, and that the galaxy's acceptance of the truth would always remain unspoken. The protocol would work, and no one would ever have to define the shape of its prison. Just the open gate and the quiet certainty of a planet that needed no walls. Back at Sigma, the dust had barely settled from the last visitor when another shuttle descended, its hold carrying a single prisoner. Patrick poured 2 mugs from the battered pot, the ritual older than any wall, and waited.
Welcome to Sigma.
The newcomer looked past him, past the pillars, into the endless red horizon that offered no fences, no towers. A questioning hand rose, gesturing at the emptiness.
Walk 5 minutes in any direction. You'll find them.
The new prisoner stared at the desert, and in that silence, the lesson began again. The sun slipped lower, and the gate stood open, as it always had, a question without an answer. And the desert waited, patient and absolute, needing no walls, no guards, no reason, just the quiet truth that some prisons are not made of stone. A fresh set of footprints broke the smooth sand outside the gate, the only proof that someone had chosen to leave. The wind was already at work, blurring the edges, erasing choice. And so, Earth kept its prisons, the gates stay open, and prisoners come and go. But the desert remembers every step. No one walks out. The ones who go vanish into the red, their names reduced to pins on a map in a dusty room. No one ever will walk out, because Earth does not need walls to be a warden. The gate remained open, a promise that the only true cell was the planet itself. And the sand shifted, covering the tracks, until no evidence remained that anyone had ever been. Just the red desert, endless and patient, under a sky that held no answers.